私の声は聞こえてますか？よろしくお願いします。
Up a little bit. Yes, we can.
マイクロソフトの創業者ビル・ゲイツさん。彼が2000年に設立した世界最大の慈善団体ゲイツ財団は、これまで途上国で発生した病気や貧困に寄付してきました。とりわけ力を注いできたのが感染症です。2015年に登壇したテッドトークでは、
When I was a kid, the disaster we worried about most was a nuclear war. Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war.
エボラが流行したこの年、世界全体がウイルスに対する準備不足であると警鐘を鳴らしていたのです。この演説から5年後、予想は不運にも当たってしまったのです。6月に発売されたビル・ゲイツさんの新刊には、世界の健康問題に取り組んできた活動が深く記されています。
このテッドトークは4300万回再生されているが、その 95% はコロナのパンデミックが始まってからの再生回数だ。2015年にこの本を書いておくべきだったのかもしれないが、多くの人が読んだとは思えない。
今私がここにいるのは東京の羽田空港国際ターミナルです。新しくできたばかりのはずだった空港がもう2年間もコロナによって封鎖されています。で、やっぱりコロナというのは本当に私たち世界中の人々を翻弄しました。今この世界をどんなふうにご覧になってますか？
Well, sadly, the prediction that we'd have a pandemic came true, and also, sadly, we didn't prepare as much as we should have. Well, governments do a good job on areas like fire and earthquake, and of course, they put massive resources into their defenses so that, you know, it's not attractive to have more wars. We need to add pandemic to that list. And so I think now, with all this economic damage and over 20 million deaths, now I think people will invest in having the global capability, the domestic capability, and these new tools, R&D tools, to help because it will happen again.
ということは今またさらに強く警鐘を促したいというふうにビル・ゲイツさんは思ってらっしゃるということですか？
Absolutely. We should start the discussion about what sort of global team we need and what sort of domestic team and what tools we need so that it's not like it was this time.
歴史を振り返れば、これまで幾度も猛威を振るってきた感染症。それでも人類はパンデミックへの予防が十分ではなかったとビル・ゲイツさんは言います。だからこそパンデミックの予防に特化した3000人の専門家を集め、今までにない新たな国際組織の創設を提案しています。
運営コストは年間10億ドルほど必要だろう。コロナがそうだったように、世界に何兆ドルもの損害を与える悲劇への保険になると考えると、年間10億ドルはお買い得だろう。
The way to stop this is to think of it like a fire that can not only engulf an entire city, but it can spread throughout the world. And so all countries benefit if we see the outbreak in the first country and stop it there before it spreads. And so investing in this global team for monitoring and practicing getting ready, that is a very, very good investment. Compared to the economic loss of the pandemic, it's not even a thousandth of the cost of the tragedy.
マイクロソフトの経営から身を引き、今や世界最大規模の慈善団体を率いるビル・ゲイツさん。ところが彼が多額な寄付を行い、ワクチンの普及に勤しむほど、彼のかつての発言も注目され、陰謀論が起こりました。
ビル・ゲイツはワクチンの中にマイクロチップを入れている。人々の位置情報を監視しようとしている。
コロナの中でそのビル・ゲイツさんにまつわるその陰謀論が出ました。どんなふうに受け止めてらっしゃいますか？
Well, of course, it's kind of crazy. I mean, you almost have to laugh. Why would I want to track people? I have no interest in that. But when people hear things like that, if it discourages them from getting vaccinated, including boosting, or discourages them from wearing the mask, they think there's some other crazy reason about what's going on, then that's tragic because, we need to get those messages out so people protect themselves. I certainly wouldn't have expected.
地道な行動というのがそういう陰謀論によって惑わされるっていうのはすごく悲しいことじゃなかったですか？
Well, I'm a very lucky person, so even if I have, some inconvenience, I have no complaint about the situation I'm in. I'm lucky enough with the Microsoft success.
コロナワクチンが誕生した当初、先進国はこぞってワクチンの確保に走りました。一方で途上国にはワクチンがなかなか届かず、経済格差が健康を左右する健康格差が明らかになったのです。しかしビル・ゲイツさんはこの健康格差は何も新しい問題ではないと言います。
健康格差は珍しいことではない。コロナへの世界の不平等な対応に富裕国の多くの人がショックを受けたのは、それが異例だったからではなく、他の時には健康格差が目に見えていなかったからだ。
Well, everyone should realize that health is very inequitable, and that's why the Japanese government commitment to universal health care, which has been a top priority for decades, is so important, and the generosity, which is getting even stronger in areas like polio and Global Fund, make a huge difference. And I wish all the Japanese citizens could go to Africa and see how we're improving lives and saving lives. New science, including the Japanese drug companies, are helping to invent these new medicines. And so if we're generous enough and we focus on these poor countries, we can reduce the gap very dramatically. Well, the good news is that although the disparities are still very large, they're much smaller than they were. I believe in my lifetime we can get rid of that inequity.
モチベーションっていうのはどこにあるんですか？
Well, when I was looking at how I could give away the very large fortune that my ownership of Microsoft created, I was thinking, what is the highest impact? And I saw that so little money was going to save lives from infectious diseases like malaria or polio. Well, certainly, I get a choice of how to spend money. I could buy lots of houses or something. So we did have a choice to make, to pick, consumption versus philanthropy or other areas. Together with my ex-wife, Melinda, we've chosen to spend the money on global health. I feel good about, the money I have that I don't need is going to improve lives of other people, taking some causes that have been underfunded. And so, I had my Microsoft career, which was great, and now I have my foundation career that will keep me busy the rest of my life.
世界長者番付では1位に何度もなるなど潤沢な資産に恵まれたビル・ゲイツさん。その影響力の大きさを自身はどう捉えているのでしょうか。
We get to pick, and I hope we're picking well. We're certainly partnering with governments and listening. I go to Africa. I listen to what they believe they need. Fortunately, the idea of reducing deaths is not very controversial. And so, we have a clear set of goals that, we're just working on every day. I'm glad we made those choices. Our wealth compared to governments is not very high. Health budgets are gigantic. And so, Germany's hosting the G7 this year, Japan is next year, and that's a forum where everybody with good ideas can be debated and we can come up with a plan and fund that plan. So yes, we have some influence. Hopefully it's a good influence that, when we're hiring very smart people to work on malaria and very smart people to work on polio, how that can be applied against these deaths and solving health problems.
ビル・ゲイツさん、あなたのことを聖人だというふうに思っている人って世界中にたくさんいると思います。健康格差ですとか感染症とかいろんな困難を乗り越えた先、どんなことをしてみたいというふうに思いますか？
Well, I'm afraid that there's enough infectious diseases. It will keep me busy the rest of my life. I get to relax, see friends, read, play tennis, lots of fun things. But for my work, this is really going to be it. I want to put the resources to help with these things. The real saints are the people who work in the field on these issues. And, they're making huge sacrifices, unlike me, where I have, one of the most fun jobs in the world.
エネルギー問題や食料問題など世界は人口増加によるリソース問題に直面しています。もし健康格差がなくなり長寿が全世界に訪れた時に起こる爆発的な人口増加に世界は耐えられるのでしょうか。
Yes, the world faces many challenges. It's the very unhealthy countries that have the high population growth. But when people know that at least 2 of their children will survive, then they don't feel a need to have so many children. And so that as you make countries more healthy, the adults choose to have less children. That helps us with the environment, with climate, with overpopulation in certain parts of the world.
人類は今起きるはずがないと思っていたパンデミックだけではなく戦争の脅威という新たな難局に直面しています。
There's a few things that are very, very bad, and war and pandemics are at the top of that list. We're in a worse situation than most of us would have expected, say 4 years ago, before the pandemic and the Ukraine war came and had a negative effect to the entire world. We're lucky the pandemic wasn't more fatal. The next one could be. It's good that we haven't had a large war for quite a long time. And, I hope the Ukrainian war gets settled very soon. If this war gets settled, then at least it's not, a world war. It's tragic. The Ukraine war not only is terrible for Ukraine, but the shortage of food and fertilizer is going to mean that there'll be lots of suffering, including lots of deaths in Africa as well.
21世紀に入って、人類はこれまで苦しめられてきた大きな戦争ですとか感染症みたいなものはこの先起きないんじゃないかというふうに思っていたような気がします。時代が本当に巻き戻ったんじゃないかというふうにも思うんですけれども。
Well, overall, the world is getting better, but you're right. There have been these major setbacks, and we need to innovate to minimize the damage, including, that there'll be a future pandemic.
巻き戻っては進む世界。ビル・ゲイツさんが見る未来とは。
Well, I think our basic instincts to help one another, push us in the right direction. I think our innovation, has led to an incredible improvement in lifespan. Over 100 years ago, people lived only about half as much. And so if we zoom out from these current setbacks, life has improved very dramatically. And I think that will continue on. So this is a big challenge. I still believe that we'll get through these challenges. Hopefully we're learning from our mistakes, learning what the dangers are. And so far, mankind has improved our situation. I think that will continue.